So, I ended up watching the 2009 NASCAR Sprint Cup Series season for the first time ever. Literally, have never watched a full race from the 2009 season. Obviously, it's a season with a lot of big highlights, so I know those highlights, like, for example, Dale Jr. wrecking the field in the Daytona 500, or Carl Edwards getting launched into the fence at Talladega at the finish. Stuff like the Daytona night race finish, the big crashes in the Talladega fall race with Mark Martin going over, Ryan Newman flipping over, some of the fuel mileage finishes at both the Michigan races and some of the other races. I knew, Juan Montoya dominated Indianapolis. I knew a lot of the big stuff about the season, some of the upset winners, stuff like that. But I didn't know the more micro-sized stuff of the season. That's a huge macro scale of like here's the big stuff that happened in the season. But I didn't know the stuff that happened in the races that got us to that point. So for the first time ever, I watched all 36 races of the 2009 season, ranked them. I'm going to talk about the 2009 season and what I felt of it because these are kind of seasons where not many people talk about them, mostly because the COT was not favorable at the time, especially coming off of the Gen 4 car, where it was, Gen 4 was amazing and kind of the car everyone knew for quite some time. And then you go to this ugly, boxy COT and you're like, whatever. So a lot of people kind of don't really talk about 08, 09, 2010, also because of the Jimmy dominance. People don't like dominance, and Jimmy Johnson winning 5 championships in a row and 3 of them coming at the beginning of the COT era definitely didn't help as well. But so to talk about some of 2009, I guess I'll start with some of the positives of 2009, and I'll talk about some of the races that I found really, really fun. So I'll kick it off. I'll start talking about the top three because I think the top three races separate themselves from the rest of the races, even though there were some really good races below the top three. The top three were just amazing, just nearly perfect races for all three. I'll start off with what I gave number three, and that was the season finale at Homestead. This race was absolutely amazing. It only had 7 caution flags. It had a very long green flag run early on. I think it was like 80 laps or something that went caution free at the start. But oh my goodness, there were so many different people that led and battled for the lead during it. It was absolutely insane. There were battles on long green flag runs for the lead all throughout the pack. It was amazing seeing the different lines that everyone ran. It's Homestead, obviously, and it's right when the track started to, I think, wear out to where it was a lot more abrasive, and like really had some character to it. But in a 267 lap Homestead race, the most laps led was 71 by Denny Hamlin. There were so many different drivers that went up there and actually led laps on merit and not necessarily because of pit cycles. Drivers like Hamlin, who led 71, Harvick led 56, Kurt Busch led 43, Tony Stewart led 43, Jimmy Johnson led 28, Jeff Burton led 19, Marcos Ambrose led 4, Kyle Busch led 1, and Clint Boyer led 1. All those drivers led those under green, not during pit cycles. Clint Boyer cycled out to the lead, led a lap, and then lost it to his teammate Kevin Harvick. But otherwise, every driver that I mentioned there, they all led their laps under green. In fact, only one of the 267 laps was not led by one of those drivers. That was Michael Waltrip because he stayed out under caution at one point to lead a lap. Um, Otherwise, all those other drivers, even Marcos Ambrose, early on, he went up there and passed Jimmy Johnson on merit around lap number 10, then had a flat tire and had to come into pit road, and his day derailed from there. But he had a really fast car early on. As mentioned, the Richard Childress guys looked fast. That was just an unbelievable race at Homestead. Definitely one of the best of the 2009 season, and one I would recommend to watch because it was very, very fun. And moving on to a very similar race like Homestead is the 2009 Samsung 500, the first race at Texas that season. It only had 6 cautions, which is impressive over a 500-mile lap race. Did I say 500-mile lap? 500-mile race, 334 laps. But there were so many different lead changes and so many different drivers that could have won, and it came down to actually a very kind of nail-biting finish. So the race started with like 100 laps of green flag running, and even at the end of that green flag run, drivers were still dicing it up around mid-pack, and this race was basically full of long runs. We had a 97-lap run to start, 54 laps after that, 59 laps after that, a few shorter runs, then 46 laps and 26 laps. Some pretty good green flag running, which in my opinion really, really helped the race. Jeff Gordon dominated. He led like 100 laps or so. But there were other drivers that led, like Biffle led a lot of laps. Tony Stewart led some. Matt Kenseth led some early on. Also up there battling. I think Carl Edwards got there really late at the end and almost had a shot. David Ruma was up at the front basically all day long. So there were a lot of different drivers that got up front and were kind of leading. And these races, I want to kind of talk about these three races because I'm really talking about in these top three races how many different drivers led and how many different drivers had a shot to win. And it's not like where we see now, where it's like I feel like there are a lot of races now where people can cycle out to the front and hold it because the cars are so extremely close. It's very hard to pass. In these ones, it's like, oh, Jeff Gordon got cycled back to 10th, but easily got up to the front in like 15 to 20 laps, right? Or someone got shuffled all the way back to 20th, but they fought their way back up inside the top three. That's kind of what happened in these races, other than, oh, someone stayed out, they inherited track position, and they held it for like 60 laps because it's impossible to pass. It was harder to pass, I feel like, in 2009 than some of the other seasons I've watched, but it also seemed like if you had a really good car, you did move through the field, and that was the case for basically all these races. So all these people that I just mentioned right there at Texas, they all led laps on merit, and they all did it because of the speed of their race car. But also at the end, Jimmy Johnson was basically nowhere during the race. And then all of a sudden, right at the end, he's the one running down Jeff Gordon, and he came pretty close to catching Jeff for the race victory. I mean, it was oh so close. So the 2009 Texas race, in my opinion, this first Texas race of 2009 is the best Texas race I've ever watched so far. It was very, very fun to watch, and a race I would also recommend to watch even more of. But it did not beat out the next race for best race of 2009. For the second straight season of races I've reviewed, the best race of the season was the Labor Day Atlanta race. For some reason, these Labor Day Atlanta races are always good. In 2010, it was the best race of the season. In 2011, I think it was the third best. And then here in 2009, it was the best again. Why was it the best? Well, it had 31 lead changes. That will help it for sure. There were longer runs. I think the longest run was like 70, 75 laps, something like that. But the leaders were insane. So a 500-mile Atlanta race is 325 laps. The most laps led in the race was 68. 68 of 325 laps. That's insane. That's only 21% of the laps. The most laps led was 21% of the laps of the race. So, we had Martin Truex Jr. lead the most laps at 68. Kevin Harvick led 66. Casey Kane led 60. Montoya led 31. Jeff Gordon led 30. Kyle Busch led 24. Hamlin led 23. Jimmy led 17. Those are the drivers that really led laps because of their speed. Vickers led 2 laps. Newman led a lap. Biffle led a lap. Kenseth and Waltrip also led a lap. I'm pretty sure those drivers were just staying out on pit cycles to try and get those 5 bonus points because the chase battle is also very, very fun this season. I'll have to talk about that later on. But this Atlanta race was unbelievable. And I actually had someone on the 2010 video, I think it was, they said, man, if you love that 2010 Atlanta race as much as you did, you're going to absolutely love 2009's Atlanta race. Because in the 2010 video, I fawned over how great this Atlanta race was. And oh my god, 2009 was just as good, if not a little bit better, than the 2010 race. There were so many different battles, and the long run versus the short run was insane, where, you know, drivers that were going the short run, they kind of fade on the long run. There were comers and goers over a green flag run, and that's why there were so many different leaders and lead changes. It just broke up the race so well, and, you know, Harvick was so strong on a long run, he was able to just come through the field, while you had drivers like Earnhardt ripping the wall, and some of these others, you know, up against the wall, getting so close to it. Other drivers running the middle, as I mentioned, Harvick and some of the others running the bottom. It was an absolutely brilliant race at Atlanta, and yeah, that is a race. If there is one race I would recommend to watch from 2009, it is this Atlanta race. For some reason, the Labor Day races at Atlanta kind of go under the radar besides the 2011 one, but really, whenever there was a race on Labor Day at Atlanta, it was brilliant. If if the Labor Day race weekend did not go back to Darlington, if NASCAR came out and said we are not going back to Darlington for Labor Day weekend, Atlanta was the perfect fit to take its place, right? Because before 2009, what was it? From '04 to '08, it was at Fontana, which is like, whatever, but it's not the same, right? It's out west. It's not really it just didn't feel right. But then in Atlanta, it kind of found its home because 2009 was a brilliant race, 2010 was a brilliant race, 2011 was a brilliant race, 2012 was very good, 2013 was great, 2014 was kind of there. But in my opinion, of the Labor Day Atlanta races, 2014 was the worst, and it still wasn't that bad. So, yeah, if there was one place it had to be other than Darlington, Atlanta was the place to be until they changed the track. But yeah, so I mean, literally, if you want a race to watch, just look up a Labor Day race at Atlanta from '09 to 2014, and you'll find a good race no matter what. Now to talk about some of the other aspects of the season. I'd already talked about how that Texas race was the best race I'd ever watched at Texas no matter what season. Some other tracks actually had that as well. In fact, the first Dover race was one of those races. The first Dover race, in my opinion, was the best Dover race I've ever watched. It had the first, I don't know however many laps, but they went double file for the race lead. It was absolutely insane. It was it was pretty fun to watch, not gonna lie. And then I think it was right before the competition caution. I think it was a competition caution. Right before the first caution. I think it was the first caution. They went three wide for the lead. I think it was Biffle. Made a bonsai three wide move down the backstretch on, surprisingly, I think it was Reed Sorensen and David Rudiman who were also battling for the lead. Parity was another big topic with 2009. I'll get into that a little bit later. But that that three wide move happened. The middle part of the race kind of calmed down. There were still some good battles. But then the end was also amazing because there was a different pit strategy. Jimmy was the dominant car and dropped to the back. I think he was like 10th or something. And then Tony Stewart was up at the front leading. And Jimmy's drive through the field in those last laps was insane. And the move he made to pass Tony Stewart was also brilliant, right? Like trying different lanes and making it stick because he had better tires and just the better car in general. It was a fun battle to watch. And something that I also liked was Fox's ticker had broken during this time, so there was no ticker during this battle at the end of the race. I forget how many laps they went without a ticker, but it made it feel more important somehow because there was no ticker. It was like, take the ticker away, like they used to do with the ending, right? Back when, the early 2000s, Fox would get rid of the ticker for the last laps for the finish because it was, and they would just put something like end of white flag or finish or something, right? It just made it feel more important, especially if it was a close battle to the end. This made it feel more important because it was like three guys up there battling for the win with Jimmy coming on fresh tires, and it just made it feel more important, like give as much room as possible to this amazing battle that we're having. And I mean, it was just absolutely incredible. The end of that Dover race is probably, I would say, up there with the 2016 spring race for amazing finishes at Dover. Amazing battles at Dover. It was just amazing. Another track, which actually had another, best race I've ever watched here, was Michigan, the second Michigan race. Not only were there a lot of battles for position and a lot of lead changes, and a lot of good runs on longer runs, and really good restarts. There was one restart where they went in there like 6-7 wide, and I was like, I don't know if you guys wanted to do that, but it was pretty damn cool. But then the fuel mileage finish was incredible. seeing drivers at the front having to back it down while there were drivers like Earnhardt coming through the field, ripping the wall. Like, I have enough fuel. I don't know about you guys, but I'm going to go up here and pressure you guys, and if you run out, I'm going to win the race. That was fun to watch. And then seeing, Jimmy run out, Vickers just have enough fuel to make it, Jeff Gordon have enough fuel to make it. It was fun. And then even, Mark Martin ran out of fuel in the last lap, which was big because he was still not locked into the chase. Even though he had all these wins, he still didn't have the points necessary to lock his way into the chase. So that almost backfired on him entirely. So that was very fun to watch as well. So yeah, that Michigan race was absolutely incredible. The second Loudon race, while it wasn't the best Loudon race I've ever watched, it was still one of the best. Once again, great short run racing, great long run racing, some different strategy stuff. It also had, at the end, NASCAR trying to kill a driver because there was a car, was it Andretti or Allmendinger? It was one of those two. Were wrecked on the front, because this happened twice in the season. It happened in the second Loudon race and the second Martinsville race. A car was stalled basically on the start-finish line, and NASCAR didn't throw a caution until they were like coming off turn number 4, and we about killed a driver because NASCAR was like, well, maybe they'll get back going, we can finish under green. Like, no, just throw the caution. Safety first. Speaking of cautions, I'm going to break away from talking about races for a little bit and talk about how annoying NASCAR was in this time period. They were in their debris caution phase, which is kind of like the unruly teenager phase, where it's like they just didn't care. They just wanted a caution to have a caution. And oh my gosh, the debris cautions in 2009, oh my god. I know it wasn't the worst season for debris cautions. I think 2014 was statistically the worst season for debris cautions. It was like some 25% of all cautions or 26%. It was a very absurd number for debris cautions. I think 2009 is not as bad as that, but oh my gosh, it has to be up there. It is asinine how many debris cautions they called in some of these races. Like some of the races, the only cautions were for debris. That's how bad it was. Like they were like debris, 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 debris. Oh, we went 80 laps debris. Oh, we went 50 laps debris. We can't have too long green flag runs. Good God. Yeah, debris cautions were not fun. No. Not if they're fake. If there's actual debris out there, fine by me. Call a debris caution. If there's nothing out there, or if it's like a water bottle, don't throw the caution. And thankfully they fixed that. Well, they've only fixed it because they have stages. But even then, they used to call debris cautions pretty late to try and set up a crazy finish. At least now, they don't do that. Most of the debris cautions, if not all of them, are actually legit. So I'll give props to them on that. With that, they've evolved from that. They've changed their ways. I'll give NASCAR kudos on that. Also caution worthy. Rain. For some reason, the 2009 season was plagued with rain. If it wasn't the race getting rained out to a completely different day, or the race getting rain shortened, you would always hear during the broadcast, oh, this practice got rained out, qualifying got rained out. I mean, there were so many races in 2009 that got rained out, or yeah, just qualifying. Martinsville, the first Martinsville race. Rain, couldn't qualify. First Pocono, rain. First Loudon, rain. Second Daytona, rain. Second Pocono, rain. Talladega, more rain. 6 races had rain. Cancel qualifying. And then races that were rain shortened. Daytona 500, rain shortened. Coke 600, rain shortened. First Loudon race, rain shortened. Pretty sure that's the only one. Yes, I'm pretty sure those are the only ones. But then, NASCAR got so unlucky that even races had rain in the middle. Fontana had like 2 or 3 different rain cautions, which totally ruined the flow. Charlotte had like 3 or 4, the 600. Poor old the second Michigan race, there was a 15% chance of rain for the day, and they got 2 rain cautions. 2009 had some messed up stuff with rain, and I'm like, I don't even want to go over all that. But the rain was absurd in 2009. And unfortunately for some races, like the Fontana race, for example, it already started at like 5:30 anyway. But then it had rain, I think, delay that start even later. And then rain delay the race even more during the race. And it went so late that it was nighttime, and the racing was just bad. Like, I feel like the race would have been decent, but if it started on time and if it went uninterrupted. But there were so many rain cautions, man. It ruined the flow. And then even poor old the Coke 600 had some pretty good racing during it, but there were so many rain cautions and it got rain shortened. I couldn't give it a good rating because it annoyed me. Um, and that's where you know a race is good when you get annoyed that a caution comes out because you're like, God, there was gonna be such a good battle. Like at Homestead, that happened so many times, where I was like, oh, okay, this sentence would be good. There's gonna be like 3 cars for the lead or something, and then a caution comes out. I'm like, God, even if it's like a legit caution, I'm like, why? Why couldn't we just go green there for a little bit? Other stuff that I want to talk about, the second Martinsville race was interesting because they had complete green flag pit cycles. When I think that's the last time we had a green flag pit cycle actually cycle all the way through at Martinsville. Or I guess I forgot about the spring race of 2022. Yeah, that had a. I guess that cycled through. Yeah, that cycled through. It was bad, but it cycled through. Uh, this was the last good Martinsville race that had a complete green flag pit cycle. Nothing to the spring race of 2022, but it was poor. But yeah, this second Martinsville race was fun because there were like there were a lot of cars there too that could have won. Like Denny was very good, and he obviously won the race. But Jimmy was just as good. Montoya was just as good. Gordon at points was just as good. So that was a fun race to watch. Um, Other races I could talk about. The second Richmond race was pretty fun, especially in the first half, because Denny Hamlin and Jeff Gordon were so equal that they battled very, very hard, and they kept trading the lead back and forth in the first half. Unfortunately, in the second half, Denny took over and dominated and won easily. But the first half of that was amazing. Then the second half was kind of made up for because it had really good chase implication battles between Kyle Busch and Brian Vickers. Because, not going to lie, the 2009 fight to get into the chase was one of the best I've seen in terms of drama. Uh, I think entering into Richmond, only like 5 spots were locked up. It was like 4 or 5 spots were locked up entering Richmond only. So they had like 7 spots left open, and there were like 8 or 9 or 10 drivers fighting for those spots. Yeah, it was pretty fun. Especially those from like Pocono on down that run to the chase. Absolutely amazing. In the second half of that Richmond race with Vickers and Kyle Busch trying to get points over each other, that was very fun as well. Kind of left me on the edge of my seat and left me really wishing I didn't know who made the chase in 2009 because I was like, I already knew Vickers made it, so I was like, yeah, Vickers makes it. I want to see how he makes it though. If I didn't know, I would be like, oh my god, this is insane. This is amazing. Unfortunately, I knew. But it was very fun still, nonetheless, to watch. So yeah, that first half of the Richmond race was fun. I want to talk about the chase race at Talladega too for a little bit because so this is the race where NASCAR said you couldn't push in the corners. They were like, if you guys can't control it, we'll police it. So they said, don't push in the corners. You can push on the straightaways. Don't push in the corners though, because you guys cannot control it. I think that mostly happened because Carl got launched into the fence in the first Talladega race, and also they had a crash at like lap 7, and it took out like half the field. So I think NASCAR didn't want that to happen again. But the drivers in the first half, as ESPN called it, seemingly were boycotting because they were running single file up against the wall and weren't making moves. So there were some points in the first half where they were making moves, but most of it was run single file up against the wall. Literally no one making a move. And I thought the whole race was going to go like that, but once the second half hit, it was like the drivers figured out how to race with the rules they were given. And they started like slamming each other, and they were like 4 wide, 3 wide. There was some actually really good racing in that second half of the race. Unfortunately, it kind of all got tainted because Newman ended up upside down, then Mark Martin ended up upside down, and they had gone pretty clean for most of the race. It was a very clean Talladega race until those last 2 cautions. Then it turned into classic Talladega stuff. But up to that point, it was actually pretty fun, not going to lie. You take away that single file stuff, even then, it kind of happens at every super speedway race like that. Because it's like, they're going to have to ride single file at some point. Obviously, it happened a little bit more than normal in that Talladega race, but it still had 60 lead changes. It had some pretty good racing. It was mostly clean up until the end. So I was like, you can't really argue that much against it being bad. It was pretty good Talladega race. Uh, Now I want to just talk about some of the bad races, and you know, if anything, I might just talk about the one race that I thought was awful. I already talked about the Coke 600. Chicagoland was pretty bad. The first Loudon race, the second Phoenix race, the second Dover race, first Fontana, second Texas. Those were all kind of or bad. But the worst race of them all, which almost topped the 2016 Brickyard 400, was the 2009 Brickyard 400. Oh my gosh, if the passing there was not awful. You could not pass. It was like impossible to pass. I don't like oh my god, it was so bad. There was so little passing. Most of the passes I think happened because of pit strategy. It was it was embarrassing to watch, and I was like, man, I hope this oval never comes back. Even though I don't like the Roval either, man, I hope this oval never comes back because I cannot imagine what the new cars would be like at the oval. But my goodness, this 2009 race sucked. Um, it's not even like Montoya dominated. Obviously, he pulled away, but the racing behind him wasn't even racing. It was like everyone was just vroom, 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 vroom. Like you would wait like 8 seconds for the next car at some point, and you're like, what are we doing? Like it not good racing. Great racing for an Indy car, an open wheel car. Not good for a stock car. Don't need to go there. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say about that Indianapolis race. There was not much more to say about that one. And I think that's pretty much it. I'm looking over these races, and yeah, I don't really see much more to talk about. So in terms of what rating I would give the season, I would probably I'll compare it to other COT seasons. It was not as good as 2011 or 2010. I'd place it right around 2012. Maybe a little bit better, probably like right around it. In terms of average race rating, it was given a 69.9, which is basically 70. In terms of where that places it among 2010 to 2019, it places it fifth. It is below 2011 at 76, 2010 at 72.4, 2014 at 71.6, and 2013 at 70.5. And then at 69.9, it beat out 2016 at 68.3, 2012 at 68.2, 2018 at 67.5, 2017 at 66.9, 2015 at 63.8, and 2019 at 62.6. I do want to add that I find it ironic that so far through the 11 seasons I've watched, high horsepower has been there for 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014. So 6 of the 11 seasons I watched that I reviewed, high horsepower. They have 6 of the top 7 spots. The only lower horsepower season was 2016. That separates them. And it doesn't separate them by much. It's like a tenth of a percent point that separates it by. So, yeah. Apparently, I just really like high horsepower. And maybe just high horsepower produces better racing. I don't know. And the way I ordered those, in terms of like average, I don't know if I would necessarily like be like, oh, my favorite races were or my favorite seasons were how the average breaks out. I feel like it's kind of like I would order a little bit different, but I mean it's pretty close. So yeah, 2009, a very very decent season, right? If you're gonna watch stuff from 2009, skip the summer entirely. The summer was awful. Basically, once Pocono hit, the first Pocono race, just ignore everything. Pocono was decent at best. Michigan, the first Michigan race wasn't good. Sonoma was actually pretty good. You could watch that one. Loudon, Daytona night race wasn't actually that good. Chicago was pretty not good. Indianapolis was horrible. Second Pocono race was meh. Watkins Glen was for Watkins Glen standards. But then, once you get to the second Michigan race, you could basically watch on down from there, and there are very few bad races. So yeah, that's about all I have from 2009. Very fun season. If I continue in this reverse chronological order that I've been going in, 2008 should be next. So maybe I'll do 2008 next. I don't know. Probably will. I mean, I just like to finish off the full COT seasons, so I could say like, oh, I've watched all the COT seasons now, and here's how I rank them. So I do know 2008 is like one of the more I'm trying to look for the right word. Unappreciated wouldn't work because I don't know how it is yet. It's one of the more hated seasons, I guess you could call it. It's kind of like 2018 in terms of there were very few winners. There were three drivers that dominated the season. Um, so I don't know if it's going to be like 2018 where it actually had some good. Maybe it's like 2018 where it had some really really bad races, but then also some really good races on top of it. It could be something like that. I don't know. But I'll probably watch that next at some point in the future. Um, yeah, that's about all I have for 2009. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, fun season. Uh, yeah, so that's all I have. See you guys for the next one.